In February 1996, an Alexandrian man named Muhammad Badruddin Gum'a walked into Muntaza police station to report his missing child, Gihad. Months later, the police produced a body, declared it the girl's, and moved swiftly to manufacture closure by manufacturing guilt. Gom'a was seized from his home, detained for weeks, threatened through his family, and tortured into confession. Then reality interfered. Gihad reappeared alive. The case collapsed. Gom'a was cleared. That story is not in the book I'm talking about today, but it returned to me while reading it insistently because it shaped how I understand policing, violence, and the production of crime in the first place. What stayed with me then and now was not only the brutality, it was how little the system needed truth in order to function. Investigation was unnecessary. Once a confession could be extracted, evidence became optional, violence substituted for competence. The institution did not break, it adapted. That experience and others like it form the archive I carry into this reading. Because when I read Abolish Criminology, edited by Viviane Saleh-Hanna, Jason M. Williams, and Michael J. Coyle, that Muntaza case kept returning for me, not as anecdote, but as diagnosis. Abolish Criminology is not a book about fixing criminal justice. It's a book about abolishing the intellectual machinery that makes criminal justice seem inevitable. Its target is criminology itself. The book's central argument is stark. Criminology is not a neutral discipline that studies crime as an objective phenomenon. It is a colonizing technology, a way of translating social conflict, inequality, and political violence into individualized deviance. A field that does not merely analyze the carceral state, but helps reproduce it. Reading this, I kept thinking about Muntaza, even though the book never mentions Egypt, because that case made something clear early on. Crime is not always discovered, it's produced. And once a system learns how to reliably produce criminals, it no longer needs truth. It needs compliance. It needs paperwork. It needs narratives that courts can process and media can repeat. This is why the book's insistence that reform is insufficient feels so convincing to me. Reform assumes the categories are sound. Better training, better oversight, better tools, body cameras, risk assessments. But if the category of crime itself is doing political work, then reform sharpens the blade rather than blunting it. One of the most powerful contributions of Abolish Criminology is its focus on epistemic violence, on how criminology does not just police people, but knowledge. The discipline decides which questions are legitimate and which are out of bounds, which frameworks count as rigorous and which are dismissed as ideological, which voices are amplified and which are managed, sidelined, or excluded. This resonated deeply with me because it mirrored what I had already seen at the level of institutions. In Muntaza, police did not only torture bodies, they tortured narratives. They forced one version of reality into existence and crushed the rest. Criminology performs a quieter version of the same work. It disciplines thought. It narrows political imagination while presenting itself as a neutral expertise. The book also dismantles criminology's preferred self-image as a modern progressive science. It traces the discipline's emergence alongside scientific racism, colonial governance, and projects of population control. Crime statistics, predictive policing, and risk assessment are shown as descendants of older efforts to classify dangerous people. This matters because it punctures the fantasy that the system can be fixed by technical upgrades or diversification. If the roots are colonial violence, the outcomes are not accidental. Again, the Muntaza case returned for me here. Not because it proves the book's argument, but because it made the argument feel obvious long before I encountered it in academic form. In systems built on coercion, professionalism does not eliminate violence, it often rationalizes it. Another insight in the book that stayed with me concerns space. Abolish Criminology insists that carcerality does not begin and end with prisons. Courts, courthouses, and legal rituals are themselves carceral spaces. Their architecture and choreography stage power as inevitability. This rang true immediately. Long before I had the language for it, I understood that courts do not simply correct police violence, they often process it into legitimacy. The Muntaza case did not end in justice, it ended in administrative repair. The system absorbed the error and moved on, intact. The book is also excellent on how carceral logic travels. Criminology does not operate in isolation. It borrows from biology, psychology, urban planning, and data science. Narratives about genetic difference, behavioral risk, and problem populations circulate freely, acquiring the aura of science. The result is a shared language of inevitability. Crime becomes culture, crime dramas, political speeches about public safety, think tank reports. Over time, the categories feel natural, the solutions feel obvious: more police, more surveillance, more punishment. Criminology succeeds when it no longer needs to announce itself. This is where the Muntaza story returns for me one last time. Not because the book references it, not because Egypt is its focus, but because the experience stripped away the illusion that crime is a stable object waiting to be discovered. What happened there was the enactment of a logic in which guilt is produced, then accepted, because it fits an existing narrative of crime and control. The confession stood in for truth. The suffering became administratively legible. The system moved on. Abolish Criminology insists that this is the deeper scandal, not just violent institutions, but ways of knowing that make violence appear reasonable. Reform reassures the public that the problem is technical. Abolition asks a more unsettling question. What if the categories themselves are the problem? For me, abolishing criminology is not an academic provocation. It's a demand to stop laundering violence through expertise. It is a refusal to keep asking how to improve institutions whose primary function is to manage inequality through force. From Muntaza police station to the global circuits of criminological knowledge, the through line is clear. When truth becomes optional and coercion becomes routine, the discipline that explains this as crime control is part of the problem. Abolish Criminology names that problem with clarity and courage. And then it does something rarer still. It insists we can do without it.